Let me speak first of all about elections. Elections, some people, when they speak about elections, I have the impression this is an accident. It's terrible that there are elections. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we shouldn't speak like that about elections. Elections are a wonderful moment in our democracies. They are the peak of democracies. They are the necessary rendezvous with the voter. And therefore, I think politicians may not always like them, but we as citizens should like them. They are the moment of accountability. They are a moment of saying what went right and what didn't go so well. And I'm very glad that we have elections in Europe, both in our member states and at the European Union level. And we don't have them only here. Ladies and gentlemen, you have probably seen this already. 2024 is the year where is an accumulation of elections in Europe. It's the super election year. We have about every second citizen on this planet is voting somewhere. Not all exactly elections as we have them in the European Union, but more or less. Think about India, a very interesting election. And I read many, many negative and pessimistic predictions before. This seems to be, by the way, before elections, people are maximizing negative predictions. And then it went all slightly differently. I personally believe in the power of democracy. I know that democracy is not perfect because we human beings are not perfect, but I think we should be a bit more humble and see elections what they are, the moment where power is limited and where new directions are chosen for the future. And these are the elections in the world. I have listed on the right side all the elections that took place in the European Union, in our member states, around this time of the European Parliament elections, because we should not forget that, ladies and gentlemen. Democracy in the European Union exists at two levels, in our member states and at the European Union level. This is so specific. This is why one could compare policy making in the European Union and democracy to three-dimensional chess. For those who are fans of Star Trek, you may remember that Spock is playing three-dimensional chess. You need to be a Vulcanian to do that. Three-dimensional chess is very difficult because you have at the same time to watch what is happening at several levels. And if you add to that, we have in some countries regions and even local elections which are important. It gets rather complicated, but also very fascinating. So let's not think about elections in Europe in a one-dimensional way. Let's also think, as Ambassador Briggs reminded, what's happening in our neighboring countries. There will be elections this year in some countries which will be very influential on Europe, and therefore let's look at them with humility, but also with the required attention. I have some problems here with this one. Perhaps somebody can help me, or otherwise I'll just do it like this. You see. So this is what I wanted to show you. Elections in Europe take place at two different levels, at national level and at European Union level. And why is it three-dimensional chess? Because national elections are determining who sits in the Council of Ministers and in the European Council, and European Parliament elections every 5 years determine who sits in the European Parliament. But decisions in Europe require the two levels of democracy to come together. So don't look only at the European Parliament elections. Don't only look at national elections. If you want to see how European decisions are made, you need to look at both together, and that sometimes is forgotten. That's sometimes forgotten. Who is in government in Europe, ladies and gentlemen? I will come to that in a second. Who, over the last 5 years, was in government? Who were the parties who were forming the government at European Union level? When you looked at some of the election posters in this or that member state, you would not have thought that these were the parties in government. But that is, I think, part of the transparency that we as multipliers, the diplomatic academy, and all communiques that we need to bring out again and again. European elections that took place in June, well, we call them European elections, and there are also some common trends that you can identify. What are the themes? So if you look, this is the European Parliament Eurobarometer study, what is the biggest theme was poverty and social exclusion, then came public health, and then came the economy and job creation, and then the EU's defense and security. These were the top four. But ladies and gentlemen, this is already misleading to present it this way, because if you go now at the same, this is the average of all 27 EU member states. So now let's break it down per countries. You have totally different views in different countries. For example, the theme poverty and social exclusion was the main preoccupation on the left in France and in Bulgaria. There it came first, in no other country. Security and defense came in the countries in the middle. You would have expected that, the Baltic states, Poland, and also Germany. And on the right side, you see the only country in Europe where climate change came top. That was Sweden, interesting enough. You also saw this then reflected in the elections. So what I want to show you with that, it's challenging. European elections, probably like Austrian elections, are difficult, because what is interesting for the citizens in Tyrol or for Vorarlberg is not the same what is interesting for the people in Vienna, as I have learned over the last 5 years. I hope you agree with me on that one, at least those who are Austrian. And in Europe, I think it is continental-wide, you have the same situation. That makes it difficult to guess and also to interpret results in the proper way, because everybody looks at results from their national perspective. What Ambassador Briggs has presented about the view of the European Parliament elections is what everybody in Austria says. That's what everybody says. But you would find in Sweden a totally different view of these European Parliament elections. And I think this is what is so fascinating about Europe. Europe requires you to look beyond your boundaries and to understand what the others are thinking, because this is the beginning of working together in Europe, to understand what the other is thinking, what the other is motivated by. So the European Parliament elections very formalistically are, when we ask what's next for Europe, is what we call the beginning of a new institutional cycle. It's like at national level, after elections, you have a new government coalition, a new government program, and then at the end, new laws. I learned today that it was more than 840 laws that the current Austrian coalition has adopted and brought to the parliament. 840. I hope you can all mention them and know what is in there. So they were working hard. And I think the same will happen at European Union level. We have the European Parliament elections. That's where the new institutional cycle starts. Every 5 years. We do this since 1979. Every 5 years. It was the 9th European Parliament elections. Then the European Parliament is elected. It has now 720 members, 15 more than last time, because we redistributed some of the seats of the United Kingdom, which were still in the European Union when we voted the European Parliament in 2019. You remember, they left only on the 30th of January 2020. The Parliament will have to constitute itself. That will happen in the coming weeks, at the beginning of July. Elect the president, create groups, the same thing that you know from all parliaments. At the same time, as we are a dual democracy, where also the member states are democracies, the key institution of the member state is also very active in these days, and that is the European Council. The European Council is the body where all heads of state or government are sitting. Heads of state or government, because in some countries is the prime minister, chancellor sitting there, in others is the president. One of them has to sit there according to the constitution. And the European Council, where all member states sit, they decided some years ago that these European Parliament elections, they are too dominant. They take away the attention from what is decided at national level. Therefore, they came up with saying at the very moment that we have European Parliament elections, they adopt a document. I brought it with you. You certainly all read this document already. It's called the Strategic Agenda. If you haven't, read it. Every 5 years, they adopt this unanimously, all heads of state or government. It's rather interesting what is in there, because 5 years later, nobody remembers what they have signed. I always read this exactly in the European Parliament. 5 years ago, all 27 heads of state or government agreed on the Green Deal. Did you know that? There was not a single green member of the government sitting at the table, because there is no government which has a green prime minister, but they agreed on the Green Deal 5 years ago. They did this, and many other things. They agreed and they implemented that, the digital and the green transition that was implemented. Therefore, it's worth looking into that one, because they have to agree on this unanimously, and they agreed on this last week. It's on the website of the European Council. I can give it to the Diplomatic Academy, that it can, for all those who admit that they haven't read it, they will get it then discreetly from the Secretariat. It's an interesting document, and it is there for member states to show, yes, there are European Parliament elections, but we are also there. We are elected at national level, and the priorities are very important that are coming from us. The next thing that is happening, ladies and gentlemen, we need a new executive at European Union level. At national level, we would call it the government. At European Union level, we call it the Commission. The Commission today is elected by the European Parliament, but again, the dual nature of democracy at European Union level, it has to be proposed by the European Council, by the bosses of the member states. So both have to come together. This is sometimes forgotten. We need both. In Austria, you cannot become chancellor if only you have a majority in the Nationalrat. You need Alexander von der Bellen, whoever is president, to propose you, and then at the end to do the Angelobung. At European Union level, we have not one van der Bellen, we have van der Bellen 27 times, but they have to agree. This is the European Council, is basically a kind of institutionalized multiple van der Bellen. And before, they proposed the president of the European Commission, and the president of the European Commission then has to be elected by the European Parliament. And when the European Commission president candidate, that's how the person is called, goes to the Parliament, they present another document, which you all should read again, because this is the governmental program for the next 5 years. And this is the basis. This is being negotiated with all member states in line with the strategic agenda, with all political groups in the European Parliament, which in the end form the majority to elect the Commission president. And if you read through it, it's like a government program. This is the one for 5 years ago. At the moment, the next one is written, because the new candidate for Commission President will have to be elected, and this is being, at the moment, done. It will be worked on until the night of the election. It will then, in the night of the election, be translated into all languages, because this is a requirement. The European Parliament has the right to get it in all languages, in all 24 languages. It will be translated in the night by very hard-working translators, and then the European Parliament has a debate and either says yes or no to the program and the candidate. So this is what's going to happen in the coming weeks. Once the president is there, we need a new European Commission. The president is only one member of the Commission. We have several members of the Commission. Also, then the whole Commission again has to go through a vote in the European Parliament, including the president. So the president has to be elected even twice by the European Parliament. By the way, I just ask in the room, when you have national elections in Austria, no, that you know, that is on the 29th, yeah. But who is electing the Chancellor? Who is electing the Chancellor? There is no vote in the Nationalrat. Of course, you need to have a majority, otherwise you will be voted out of office, but there is no constitutive vote on the Chancellor, as you would have it here and as you have it in many other parliamentary democracies. I'm just saying, sometimes I hear that Commission presidents are called, notably British prime ministers love to do this, they called Commission presidents unelected bureaucrats. Well, they even elected twice. And by the way, also all members of their team, all commissioners, have to be elected, which ministers in a national government, most of the time in most countries, don't have to be. So there is a stringent link to the European Parliament elections and democracy at European Union level, both to the member states' democracies and to the directly elected European Parliament. Once the Commission is installed, that will happen somewhere towards the end of the year, then the Commission can start to do what the Commission does. The Commission initiates legislation according to this program. What is written in here will then be implemented. So don't say these things just happen out of the air. No, what is in here, and everything what is in here last time was implemented, at least 95% according to the academic analysis of that. And the Green Deal was in there with every comma in it, which is for some surprising that this was the element of vote of the European Parliament and the Council 5 years ago. Ladies and gentlemen, so that's the new institutional cycle that we are starting. And of course, this is what decides this whole at European Union level, the composition of the European Parliament. This is the European Parliament that ended in May. So the Parliament that was there for the last 5 years. So the Parliament that voted this terrible Green Deal and all these things. This was the European Parliament. You see how this Parliament was composed. We had a broad majority, I would say, in the center, but it was more a center-right European Parliament. Does this look to you like a green, aggressive left parliament, what you have here? No, ladies and gentlemen, that was the European Parliament. So please look at that. This was the majority at European Union level, and by the way, in most member states. Now we have the elections, so what has changed? Do you think a big change happened? Well, not a big change. So this is the new parliament. This is the old parliament, this is the new parliament. It jumps a little bit because I'm not so good at PowerPoint, but you see it's just a small change. I think Carl Bildt has done the calculation that the center parties had before 59% and have now 56%, and we don't know yet whether it is. So basically that's why people interpret it as the center holds, but we will have to see more in detail what that means, ladies and gentlemen. Here you see what has shifted. So I think the European People's Party, that is in Austria, the ÖVP, won at European Union level 12 seats in a parliament of 720. That's a small shift. It's a shift, but a small shift. The Socialists and Democrats lost 3. The Conservative and Reformist, these are the Eurosceptic parties in Poland and in Italy, notably the ECR. This is the PIS in Poland. This is the Fratelli d'Italia of Mrs. Meloni. They won 14 seats, but are at 83 seats. Renew. This is the Liberal Party in Austria. It would be the Neos. The main proponent is Emmanuel Macron. They lost 27 seats, about what they won 5 years ago, so this is basically back to where they were before. Identity democracy, this is the right-wing extremist, that is notably Le Pen in France, until recently the German AfD, which was expelled by Mrs. Le Pen. They won 9 seats. The Greens lost 17. They are now back where they were 5 years ago. And then we have some on the left and some non-aligned. You have a lot of non-aligned, because the European Parliament, the political groups are very different from country together. Some first have to find their way afterwards. Where do I belong? You have in Germany, for example, Die Familienpartei. Where do they go? They joined last week the EVP. You have the pro-European Volt, which had a strong performance in several countries. In Germany, 3. They decided to join the Greens, which brought the Greens in Germany as the second strongest party in number of seats after the European Parliament elections, with the Christian Democrats being by far number 1. So you see some shifts, but not sensational shifts. Some shifts, as in an election with 720 members, you would expect some shifts after 5 years. But I'm personally surprised. That surprises me, and I'm observing this since a long time. There was not a bigger shift, because if I read the newspapers, I think the end of Europe was near, and the takeover, I don't know, by this or that force was there, but it seems not to have happened. That doesn't mean that things are easy. It becomes more complicated. Here, you just look at the colors. These are basically the election results in the different member states. You have on the left side those countries which voted more to the right. The ones that did this most are France and Austria, where the extreme right became first. On the right side, you see the countries where the left or the liberals won, and in the center, you see where the European People's Party, which is the winner of the elections, became the strongest, notably in Germany, which I think also is sometimes forgotten in the media reporting in neighboring countries. So if you look at a country like Belgium or the Netherlands just got a right-wing government, but in the European Parliament elections, the Green and the left won. So it's not also, this is also, again, Europe is not simple. It's not one solution, it's not one direction, and I personally, as a citizen, I'm happy about this. We don't have the choice between Trump or Biden. We have choices, many choices, and at the end, there is no extreme solution, because all this moderates itself. Checks and balances were not invented by us, but they are applied by us, because we have this multi-level system. So the fact that there is one party winning everything and is then dominating or discriminating everybody else is not possible in the European Union, is not possible in our parliamentary democracies. We need, when you see this, we need to speak to each other. We need to listen to each other. We need to form coalitions. And this is the art of compromise. This is probably the strength of our continent. And I wish sometimes that we all are a bit more positive about that different political forces have to agree on something, because this means we're not deciding against you. We're not deciding against you and not deciding against you, but we're trying to find solutions that take into account the different interests, even though sometimes this is slow. So if you want fast decisions, this is not a good system. But it's faster in China, and you know, with the outcome of that, perhaps the permit for the road goes faster, but it may go through your garden, and you have no say on that.